And tonight's teaching is from Ngakma Nor'dzin and is on the subject of attraction, aversion and indifference.
So is this working? Yep. So I'm hoping that my voice is going to stand up to this evening. You have to excuse me having a lozenge in my mouth. This is my safety barrier, hopefully, that my voice will actually survive the evening. So, the three root misconceptions are often called the three poisons. But first of all, I want to say something about Ngakpa and Sonam. Now, Ngakpa and Sonam are often translated as sin and merit. Merit is certainly a word that you'll all be familiar with in the Buddhist world. But Ngakpa, I think because of the contrast of the two, is often translated as sin. And really this is not at all right in terms of Buddhism, because Buddhism doesn't really have a concept of sin. Buddhism, the better translation would be error, that basically we make mistakes. And it isn't that we're bad beings and that we are sinful, but it's that we're confused, that we make mistakes in understanding the nature of reality. And the mistakes that we make in understanding lead us in the direction that hurt ourselves and others. And it's this wanting to avoid hurting ourselves and others that is more the focus than trying to wipe out this stain that we might have. That is not the way it's looked at in Buddhism. And similarly, merit is not sort of stacking up some sort of piggy bank of goodness so that when you're judged at the pearly gates or whatever, you've got this stack behind you and maybe you'll get into the good place. It's actually that anything that is erroneous, anything that we make mistakes about, takes us in the direction of suffering, takes us in the direction of pain for ourselves and others, takes us away from the direction of being able to realise our nature. And our nature is actually goodness. Our inherent basic nature is goodness. So whatever we do that is merit, what's the word,
Meritorious?
Meritorious, anything that we do that is meritorious is taking us in the direction of discovering, realising, opening, generally working with our own basic fundamental goodness. So the two words that you could use instead of sin and merit could be error and congruity. So an error because you don't realise that you're taking yourself away from discovering who you really are. And congruity because how you're behaving, the views that you're holding, the actions that you're engaged in are more moving you in the direction of being congruous with awakening and becoming a kinder, happier, better person. Now, another reason for mentioning the word sin is that three words that are often used, well, actually, particularly words used in connection with what we call attraction and aversion, sound very much like the 7 deadly sins. And there can be the tendency to treat those aspects of ourselves that manifest as sins. So these are words like lust, desire, passion, and in terms of aversion, hatred, anger, aggression. They have that feeling of them of being sort of sinful and things we don't want to do. Whereas attraction and aversion have a more open feeling about them. They have more the feeling of a spectrum there. A spectrum in oh dear. A spectrum in terms of attraction that can range from having just the very slight preference to total desire, lust, passion. So that's there, but it is this entire spectrum from one to the other. And aversion is a spectrum from just wishing that it would stop raining. We live in Wales. At the moment, it never stops raining. So it could be just wishing it would stop raining to wanting to actually murder somebody because you hate their point of view so much. So there's this entire range there. If this gets too bad, I'll probably have to just stop. Now, in terms of error, if we look at Ngakpa as an error, the primary error is always duality, that we dwell in duality, that we separate self and other, that we separate subject and object, that we are confused about whether we and other phenomena exist or don't exist, and that we believe form and emptiness are separate. So these qualities of separation, these errors that we make, manifest the three root misconceptions because of this basic root misunderstanding about non-duality. Then we are moved into reacting in terms of attraction, aversion, or indifference. Is this too unpleasant to listen to? You'll put your hand up if you want me to stop. Is it all right? Are you coping with me coughing?
I have to say at this point that Ngakma Nor'dzin has tested negative for COVID.
Yeah.
This is a cough.
And hopefully it's not the cough that's going to carry me off. So because, actually I think I'll come back to that. Let's talk about the wheel of life. The wheel of life is a very commonly seen image, usually on the outside of a monastery. The reason that it's on the outside of the monastery, whereas many of the images will be inside the monastery in places like Bhutan, Tibet, Nepal, is that this is an image everybody should see. This is an image everybody can take teaching from. So it's a universally accessible image, the wheel of life. And just in case you're not familiar with that, because we have a new person, Jane. Hello, Jane. Nice to see you. The wheel of life has it's got 12 sections around the outside, which are the 12 interdependent links. Then it's got the 6 realms of being, and then it's got in the centre, the hub of the wheel, it's got these 3 animals. We've got the the pig, the rooster or the cockerel, and the snake. And they represent these three root misconceptions. And the whole thing is held by Yama, the Lord of Death. Now, these three animals represent these three misconceptions. The pig represents ignorance or indifference. So this is ignorance in the sense of actively deciding not to care, actively deciding not to look at a situation and find out what it's about. It's an active ignorance. It's not just not having the facts and not knowing. It's deciding to walk to the other side of the road because you don't want to help someone. It's just not bothering to notice somebody, and so on and so forth. The rooster represents attraction, and the rooster's a bit of a sort of showy, noisy, bit of a show-off sort of animal. And so the plumage is very colourful, it's very beautiful, and so this represents attraction. And then you have the snake, and I think in many cultures the snake is regarded as a slightly tricky being, is often associated with negativity in some way. And here the snake is a creature that might bite you. So the snake represents aversion, or it might wind itself round you and throttle you. And I mean, many of the tankers of the Wheel of Life, they are holding each other's tails. And this represents the quality of we go round and round in circles. Because we separate form and emptiness, subject and object, self and other, because we continually create this separation, we are inevitably thrown into these three patterns of either indifference, attraction or aversion. So they're holding on to each other's tails. But in some images of the Wheel of Life, the cockerel is actually the pig is actually spewing out the cockerel and the snake. So this is to represent that ignorance is the primary one, active ignorance, and that ignorance can lead to attraction and aversion. But this ignorance is fundamental to how we actually create this going round in circles. So because of our ignorance, when we encounter somebody or a situation, we might put on a big show of being nice and liking it and going for it and wanting it and lusting for it. Or if it seems to threaten us, then we might come out and try and bite it because we feel threatened. So ignorance will spew up one of these two responses to life circumstances. Now in Sutra, we renounce our separation of self and other by focusing on other. So we focus on trying to be nice to other people. That is the focus of the Sutrayana path. To develop kindness and to let go of the focus of the self and work towards the experience of emptiness of the self. But in Vajrayana, we regard everything as available to transform. So here, we aren't trying to get rid of responses, we are transforming them. So in Sutrayana, very much the path is often talked about as we must we must get rid of desire. It's very bad to have desire. Desire has to be worked with and let go of, and we visualize a person that we're attracted to as being this body full of pus and unpleasant things, like but that is a method of letting go of attraction and entering into that emptiness with regard to that attraction. However, in Vajrayana, it's very important that we have desire. In Vajrayana, it's essential to have desire and like things and appreciation, because that is actually the fuel of the practice. That is what we engage with to affect the practice of transformation. I'm going to start with indifference, because even though indifference is connected to ignorance and is therefore fundamental, in some ways ignorance is the potentially least harmful of the three root misconceptions, because at least you're not engaging. At least you're not responding from attraction and moving into a situation that might create pain for yourself or others. At least you're not averse to the situation and responding in a way that might be painful for yourself and others. So indifference is the safest stance, but it's cold, it's disconnected, it's not easy to really make a connection with your own intrinsic basic goodness from the position of emptiness. It's very much connected to the space element, to a lack of connection with the sensory fields. The sensory fields perform within space, but if you live in space, then you're not really connecting with those sensory fields. It's very important in order to practice Vajrayana and to establish connections with others and to transform your experience of yourself and the phenomenal world and other beings. It's very important to make those connections and to have the energy to engage. So indifference is not the ideal place to be in terms of Vajrayana. It would be much more regarded as of an ideal stance from the point of view of Sutrayana, because the serenity of the idealized indifference means that you can have this benevolent aura about you, but unless there's connection and you're actually helping beings there, then it's still ignorance. It's still not going to be helpful. If you're very attracted in Vajrayana to the peaceful, serene beings, the serene yidams, when I first came across Vajrayana, I was very much attracted to the serene beings. I wasn't really attracted to the wrathful beings at all. I really wasn't very interested in them, and joyous beings are not so common. So I was very attracted to the peaceful beings, because I think when I first became involved in Buddhism, my life was pretty chaotic and there was quite a lot of pain there. And the idea of being this serene being sitting on a lotus blossom, looking perfect and clear and wise, and that was very appealing for me. But there's not a lot of energy there. So indifference is the least harmful, probably because there's not very much energy there, but it also, in a sense, it has the least potential. So we don't want to lose our attraction and our aversion. Well, that's not true. We do want to lose our attraction and our aversion, but we don't want to lose the energy that creates attraction and aversion. We want to transform attraction and aversion without losing the energy of it, so that they become their realized qualities. So attraction, the realized quality of attraction is complete appreciation. It's being able to engage and connect and appreciate anything and everything. It's connected with the earth element and the fire element, and this is connected with feelings of happiness, joyfulness, love, feeling pleasure in terms of phenomenal reality, what we want to engage with, that we come across in phenomenal reality. And so there are many of the qualities of attraction that we really want to encourage. We want to encourage that love. We want to encourage that appreciation. We want to feel connected to everything that's going on and attracted to being involved with everything that is going on. But unfortunately, what we do is that we continue to make this separation, that there's the thing or the person or the situation that we're attracted to, and somehow it feels separate to me. It isn't, I don't have it. And we actually enjoy the feeling of attraction so much that when we do have it, that when we're able to connect, when we're able to actually own the thing that we want to, that we appreciate, or have the relationship with a person we want to have a relationship, or we get the job or whatever, then suddenly the capacity to appreciate it changes. It may remain for a little while, but then it starts to dwindle, because the separation that we experienced with the object of attraction is lost through joining with it, through owning it now, experiencing it now, being in the relationship, having the new job, buying or being given the thing that you really wanted. And so it becomes part of you and it kind of disappears. And if one isn't able to remain with the appreciation that gave rise to that attraction in the first place, then there is the danger that you become indifferent to that, that ignorance re-emerges, and you have to go for something else. You have to move on to another thing to be attracted to. So this could mean moving on to another relationship, moving on to wanting to own something else, and so on and so forth. So this is the problem with attraction. If we lose touch with appreciation, if we can take the self out of the appreciation and just have the appreciation, then that appreciation can be endless. And that appreciation is compassion. That appreciation is, or can become, if we can also remove the ignorance, the root ignorance, that compassion, that appreciation becomes the fuel that enables us to discover realization, to awaken. Because if we can appreciate everyone and everything everywhere all the time, in every moment, then that empty appreciation, that passionate, spacious passion, it becomes the path of realization. So now we'll move to aversion. Or I'll just say that in terms of Adriana, there are joyous yidams that you can practice. And these are usually dancing. They're more energetic than the peaceful yidams. So there's some energy there that they're usually are holding things like maybe a bow and an arrow. They'll be wearing perhaps flower ornaments and things like that. So there's much more energy there in terms of the joyous yidams. So now we'll move on to aversion. Now, aversion is connected with the water and the air element. So these are feelings of dislike, irritation, paranoia, jealousy, anything that makes us feel that our definition of ourselves, or our definition of what we see as a good situation, is somehow threatened by something. And again, this can be quite subtle, or it can be actually that somebody is threatening us. But in some ways, it's much more useful to look at how we allow the small things to threaten us, because we can immediately do something about that. If you are actually physically being threatened by somebody, I would recommend running away. But aversion, again, if we can remove us out of the aversion equation, remove the self that is feeling threatened by whatever this situation is, then there's a possibility of humour. So there's also the possibility of looking at what other opportunities can arise then. So rather than being angry with the bus driver when you've run for the bus, he's seen that you're running for the bus, but he thinks, oh, no, I'm going to go anyway. So he closes the doors and he moves away from the stop just as you get there out of breath. You can feel annoyed. You can feel annoyed at that, and maybe write a really strong letter to the bus company and make sure you note the time and the number of the bus, etc., so that that particular individual is disciplined. Or you can look at, oh, well, I've now got 20 minutes of space until the next bus. Or maybe it's also pouring with rain and you're now going to get really wet. You could actually find that amusing. You know, it's sort of, well, how much worse can it get? I'm going to get really wet. I've missed the bus. I lost my shoe as I was running for... I mean, you could make up this whole amazing scenario of how bad can bad be. And at some point, if we can let humour arise in that and see that it isn't actually that the universe is trying to get at us, or that even if the universe, or rather even if the bus driver in that example was trying to do something, it wasn't personal, because that bus driver didn't know me. And he probably thought it was an amusing thing to do as well. So you could almost join in with her, it could be a female bus driver. You could join in with their amusement of shutting the doors and driving off just as you got there. It may not be a very kind thing to do, but from another point of view, there is something that's a little bit funny about it. So if we enter into the dimension of being amused about that and look for ways in which we can actually appreciate the new situation that has arisen because of the situation we thought we were going to be in, which was on the bus going wherever we're going, then a different opportunity has arisen. And life always does that. It always offers us a different opportunity. There's always the new situation that we can play with, whatever that is. We could also perhaps feel a bit sorry for the bus driver because of their ignorance in that situation, and that actually they've patterned themselves to either be unkind or to be amused by somebody's misfortune. There is a type of person out there who seems to find amusement in other people's misfortune, and we could perhaps feel a bit sorry that they have that pattern, and they've added to that pattern, and that pattern ultimately isn't actually going to do them any good. It's not going to move them in the direction of awakening. So we could feel sorry about that rather than feeling sorry for ourselves. So again, it's taking the self out of that situation. Now, the yidams that are connected to the yidam's awareness being, in case you're not familiar with the word yidam, the awareness beings that are connected with aversion are the wrathful awareness beings, and these are extremely energetic. And when I first came across wrathful awareness beings, and I'd already by then understood the idea, at least as a theory, of arising as the yidam, my feelings were very much, but I don't want to look that ugly. I don't want to have people's skins on me. I don't want to be trampling on people. I don't want to, and so on and so forth. I don't want to be holding a ripped out heart. I don't want to be holding all these weapons and so on and so forth. And that really was just my ignorance in not understanding. And this completely switched for me one day when Rinpoche, one of my teachers, was talking about how he was attracted to the wrathful awareness beings right back at the beginning of his contact with Buddhism, because they were so energetic. And he said he just saw them as this incredible energy. And once I started to look at them in that way, I realised that not wanting to look ugly was a really very small mind that I could let go of. That isn't the point at all. If you have to discipline your child, for example, you may manifest a wrathful face because of the urgency. I'm writing a book at the moment about the Wheel of Life, and in that I give a little story, which I'll just say here, which is that at one time we went up to York to visit my brother and his partner at that time for bonfire night. And the bonfire wasn't going very well. It was a bit pathetic and not really getting going. And my brother's partner picked up a can of paraffin and was about to throw it onto the fire. And we both knew exactly what would happen if she did that, that the flame, that there was a flame, would come from the fire down that paraffin and explode the can of paraffin in her hand. I don't know why we knew that, but we just knew that would happen. And we were suddenly incredibly energized. We both leapt up. We shouted no in the sort of voice that you can't ignore. We shouted no, and I'm sure our faces must have looked like wrathful beings. And it was just the urgency of telling her, don't do this, no. And we leapt up, and and she was so shocked by our reaction that she stopped and she didn't do it. And so the situation was safe. We explained to her why we'd been that. But I think our whole demeanour was quite shocking for her. She was really quite taken aback. But the urgency of the moment demanded it. And that is the urgency of the wrathful yidams. That is what they're telling you, that it's a serious business that we're continually practicing Korwa, going round and round in circles through attraction, aversion and indifference, continually circling through ignorance of duality. It's a serious business because unless we engage in practice that starts to break that pattern, engage in practice that starts to undermine that practice and move us more in a congruent direction of awakening and kindness and appreciation, that it's not going to be good news, that karma's going to come up and get you. You're going to be creating those patterns that are going to lead to unhappiness for yourself and for others, that is inevitable. So this is their message. This is why they look like they look, because there's this incredible energy of urgency about them. And what they're trampling is trampling anger, they're trampling neurosis, they're trampling patterning. They're carrying weapons so they can cut away self-justification and selfishness and all these aspects of indulging in aversion in particular. They're cutting away these neuroses and destroying them. And that is the energy of those beings. So just to wind up now and finish now is that indifference is the least harmful, and so to engage in a Vajrayana practice with a peaceful yidam, this will have a gradual effect and you may become more serene rather than indifferent. It will work with indifference in that way, but it will be slow. It won't really be any faster than the Sutrayana path of renunciation. It will be transformative, but it'll be slow. If you engage in the practice of a joyous yidam, then this will move a little bit faster. But if you engage in practice of a wrathful yidam, then this is going to be incredibly fast. That you will start to really change and transform and make progress very quickly. But you have to be ready for these different speeds of transformation. Rinpoche has compared this to holding a tray. So you've got some objects on this tray. And if you practice a peaceful yidam, then you tip the tray just very slightly. And the objects may start to slide a little bit. If you practice a joyous yidam, you're tipping the tray a little bit more steeply and things will start to slide a bit more quickly down that tray. But if you practice a wrathful yidam, then you just simply tip the tray up and everything flies off it. So you have to be prepared for that if you're going to engage in wrathful practice. You have to be prepared to allow everything in your life to be up for change, everything to be completely addressed in terms of taking on the challenge of engaging in that transformation. And we're not always at that place. So this is one of the wonderful things about practicing Dzogchen, which is the most subtle path of Vajrayana, is that all the paths are available to us. So if you're in this situation with the bus driver driving off and leaving you there, you are feeling very angry, then you could practice the renunciate path and practice sending loving kindness to the driver to overcome your feelings of anger. If you're practicing the Vajrayana path, then you can either engage in being peaceful about it, or appreciating other things through the qualities of the yidam in order to engage with the joyous practice, or you can just laugh at it. You can just let it be exactly what it is. Okay, whichever way it goes, that's the way it's going. That is just absolutely fine. And just enter the dimension of that as, this is the way it is. Transform it energetically in that moment. Is that a question?
We have a question, yes. Question from Dreamer and Samton. Did I understand correctly that you said wrathful yidams would destroy the negative energies of self-obsession, etc.? How does this relate to the idea of transforming energy?
I'm not sure that I did say that. The only way to know would be to look at the video. So if I did, I might have done. But it's a transformative energy. The wrathful yidams, I think what I was saying was the form of the wrathful yidams is that they're holding things that will destroy neurosis. So that means that when you arise as the wrathful yidam, you are the being that is transforming these neuroses because you have that capacity as that being. So the weapons and everything that are there that are about destroying neurosis are about capability. They're about the capacity to wield a knife skillfully, the capacity to know when to take a very delicate slice and when to stab. There's that. It's working with that energy of aversion in that skillful way. Is that okay, Dreamer? Good. Okay, well, my voice actually got a little bit better as we went on.
It did indeed.
So thank you very much for indulging, and I'm sorry if it was difficult to listen to that at the beginning.
And I'd like to say thank you to Ngakma Nor'dzin for her perseverance, and thank you very much for the teaching.